When we encounter a place that feels familiar before we consciously know it, what does it mean? That question leaves room for scientific theory, family history, lived experience, and imagination to coexist. This feeling is not memory in the way we remember an event or a place. It is a bodily knowing. The body remembers what it needs, what it delights in, what it craves. In those moments, there is a quiet sense of recognition, a feeling of belonging. To experience it is deeply grounding. It invites a fuller way of being, one that feels at home within itself. There is, for me, an unmistakable sense of belonging here. It arrives carrying both delight and sorrow. Delight in the abundance of fruit trees that have rewilded over time and gardens once lovingly tended still showing signs of care. Sorrow, too, for the lives my ancestors may have lived here, marked by poverty, uncertainty, and the struggle to survive. In different ways, I have known those struggles as well. Fragments of thought drift through my psyche. I don't yet know how they connect, only that a golden thread seems to be emerging, one that leads me deeper into this landscape, into my family history, and into myself. My soul aches for this golden, sunlit landscape in a way I can barely explain. It feels strangely familiar, as though it has been waiting for me. And in the wind moving across these hills, I sense something quietly calling me home. As I walk the streets of this small village, I follow a golden thread into the imaginal. A portal, through time, begins to shape my experience. I imagine who built these homes, and dry stone walls by hand, lifting and placing each stone with the hope of creating shelter and a future for those they loved. What was life like for them, and how might their lives have shaped my own? My great-grandfather was born just an hour south of Collemacchia. In the late 19th century, the landscape there would have been much like this one. Mountain villages, stone homes, cultivated gardens, and forests, woven together by footpaths and memory. Standing here, that connection feels less like history and more like recognition. We are nearly 1,700 feet above sea level. Afternoon thunderstorms are a regular rhythm, bringing the moisture that nourishes an astonishing abundance of life. The climate is uniquely balanced, supporting everything from apple trees to prickly pear cactus. It is a place of remarkable diversity, where cultivated gardens and wild landscapes exist side by side. Upon arriving in Collemacchia, I was warmly welcomed by fellow artist-in-residence Marie Salinger from Australia. We soon made what would become the familiar walk down the mountain to Filignano and the village cafe. Over delicious Neapolitan pizza, we discovered that, although our work appears quite different on the surface, a common thread runs through both of our practices: an attentiveness to place, a deep relationship with the land, and the rich inner landscape from which our work emerges. Recognizing this shared inquiry, we decided to document our residency together through video and photography. One of our first visits was to the local archive in Filignano, where archivist Eugenio Vercia generously shared his remarkable collection of photographs and artifacts and stories housed in a former school building. With Umberto translating, we learned about the rich history of the region, the lives of the people who shaped it, and the remarkable craftsmanship behind the dry stone walls that still connect these mountain villages. We were intrigued to discover that Eugenio is also an artist. In his ongoing project Les Fleurs de Mal, He transformed bombshells found along mountain paths into sculptural forms and flowers, a powerful act of remembrance that turns the remnants of war into symbols of resilience and renewal. We also came to understand why so many families left these mountains. Poverty, war, and the physical demands of sustaining life on such rugged terrain compelled many to seek new beginnings in other countries. We left with more than historical knowledge. The stories had given the landscape a new depth. Every stone wall, abandoned garden, and weathered doorway now carried the presence of the people who had built them, transforming the way we experienced this place. A week passed quickly as I immersed myself in the landscape. Each day, camera in hand, I wandered the narrow village streets before following ancient footpaths into the surrounding hills. The terrain was challenging, but with every walk, I felt myself growing stronger, physically, emotionally, and creatively. Each step seemed to reveal something new, both in the landscape and within myself. Marie had arrived several weeks before me and had been working steadily in a studio housed in another building. Curious to see how this place had been shaping her work, I set out to visit her.
So I've been out this morning and I've just wandered down through the village to pick up some fresh things to work with in terms of my prints. So these prints that I'm working on, they're pretty much a starting point for paintings that I'll create when I go back to Beechworth, to my studio in Australia. But what I want to do while I'm here is gather just that essence of Collemacchia, the memories of this place, but connected deeply to the landscape and in particular the plants, the smells, which obviously I can't take back with me, but I want to try and create like a palimpsest of memories to transport back to Beechworth. So this morning I've been working on a jelly plate and I've used just things like Queensland lace, which I just love the shape of these leaves. So this is what's I've used here. And also I just so love the shape of the fig leaves, and I've used them a lot in the past in my work. So they're a beautiful symbolic sort of shape for me. And quite often I will rip those prints to create a sort of like a symbol of a broken heart. So these are important in my work, but also grapevines and the beautiful grasses that are everywhere here. So with this piece here, this is dry, the first layer is dry, so I'm just going to put a couple of colours on to pull this print off. And I really want this to just be like, very much like what I'm seeing in the landscape as I walk around, just beautiful sort of patterns of light and shade. And so I'm creating a very sort of ad hoc background for this print, because I don't want it to be a formal sort of print. I want it to be something that's a bit organic, a bit like nature, and just to try and capture an idea of the morning light, because it was quite beautiful when I went out there before. So in terms of the colours that I'm using, I'm just trying to intuitively think about the feeling that I had this morning when I was walking in the morning light. And again, to capture that idea of the freshness, the smells, as I walked around the village of Collemacchia. And this is just tea bag paper that I'm using, which I found is absolutely wonderful, because when I collage this onto my canvas back in the studio in Australia, the tea bag paper pretty much blends into the canvas surface, and it's very hard to even tell that it's actually a print. It really becomes part of the painting, and that's very important to me. These are just steps towards a finished painting. So these are monoprints or monotypes, but I'm not trying to create a finished print. I'm creating something that I will use as a layer in my painting. So there was all these little glimmers of light, just flashes of brilliant light. And that has had a major impact on this body of work because I've used the gold just flecks throughout the prints. And they relate to what I saw on that very first night, which I'd never seen a firefly before, and it was magic to just see these bursts of light in the darkness. And my work is very much about light in the darkness. So that's a very important element to me in these prints. But again, it's very random. You can't really plan it. Sometimes it works beautifully, sometimes it doesn't. But in general, I use all of the prints in one way or another, either in paintings or in my journals. So that's the positive print from that. And I'll just show you this next to the original. The first Pulitzer print was this one. So we've got the negative. This is called the silhouette print, and this is the ghost print. So again, I'm very, very interested in positive, negative, and a lot of these prints will be used as really beautiful compositional elements in the paintings when I get back to the studio, because I just love these natural, organic lines. I've really fallen in love with the grasses as well. These incredible, beautiful shapes just blowing in the breeze. So as you can see, all of these are pretty much pieces that are based on just the things that are growing in the gardens around the village. So you don't have to go very far to find inspiration here. So these were the experiments that I did a couple of days ago out in the little pathway at the end of the street here. And so when I put these in the central sort of rocky pathway, I pressed the canvas in and I put lots of this blue paint. So I had a cobalt blue paint. I let that settle around the rocks and it created these beautiful, they look like cloud shapes. They were beautifully soft and organic. I was very happy with them. I let that dry a little and then I came back and I was using some violet ink brushed on to just give a little bit more definition. It was all looking quite nice. And then it started raining, just very little drops of rain, and it was creating these beautiful speckles. So I was quite happy with that. And then the rain got a little bit heavier. So I thought, well, I'll go away and I'll come back. But the rain didn't stop for about 3 hours and it was torrential. So later on that night, about 10 o'clock, I went back to collect these, and they'd travelled on the rain in little streams down the hill. But when I dried them yesterday and I looked at these, I think there's just these sort of amazing compositional elements in these pieces that I'm really liking. And so my plan is to move to some longer pieces of canvas, and then I've got a very wide piece that I will work on over the next week or so. So I am going to go back to that position and just see what happens, and probably using these as like artifacts and seeing how the weather, the insects, even the little cats maybe walking across them, what happens to the linen, and then maybe take that back to the studio in Beechworth and work back into it with some layers of paint and perhaps even collages, because I was thinking I could use, I'm loving the shapes of the pavers as well in the village. Just You know, these textures and the lines of the pavers as you walk around are really quite beautiful compositional elements as well. So there's a lot to work with in this village, and I'm really excited to see what happens next. So it could be more drawing, or it could be collaging, or even using some text from some of the mapping. As I walk around the different villages, I'm just drawing the maps, so perhaps I'll use some of those. Not sure yet, just gathering it all together. It's always interesting how the cats come along. They think it's food.
I picked up a golden thread and ran with it. So when I came to Collemacchia, I had an idea that I would finish or at least complete another iteration of a project I had done several years ago called Language of Heart. And when I got here, I realized I could do that, but there was really so much more. So a new project had begun. And largely I've been here photographing for the last 2 weeks. Every day I will climb a bit of the mountain, climb up, climb down the paths along the streets of this really small village that has such incredible beauty. So with that in mind, we decided, Marie and I, who is here with me, that we would collaborate a little bit. So hence we had that photo shoot that I'm going to refer to. But along the way, we had discussions, and I realized there was what Stephen Buhner calls a golden thread running through our practices and our lives. And so I picked up on Marie's golden thread the other day as she used many elements from the landscape in her work. So I decided when I was going to work with the papers that I had left over from my residency, I really didn't, from my workshop, I didn't really bring a lot of materials to work with here because I wanted to photograph and write, but I did have some things left over. I had dyes, pigments, and tea bag paper. So that's what I've worked with. So if we come over here, we can just take a look for a minute as to where I started. I had some cotton paper here that I was not planning to really use, so I used that for some testing. So what I did is basically put dye and pigment on the paper and laid it in the landscape with various items right on top, just to see if any of the print or color would pick up. And it really did. It was really interesting how we get little marks in here, little remnants of the different plants and maybe some rocks. I also crushed up gallnuts, which were very much available here. And I just sort of laid them on there. Many of these colors are made with gallnut dye and also pigments that were sourced from Italy. So you have some umbers that are just really beautiful from Italy. So as you can see, it's really reminiscent of these rocks, which are right outside the door here, and in all of the buildings. So I really picked up on the cues here. I picked up on these cues of these little collections I made of the shells, which still intrigue me. I have to do a little research on those. And I decided also to just lay out some tea bag paper, put some fig leaves on there, because that was one of Marie's signature things that she does, and put a weight on it. So this image is as a result of that. And I really love this. I'm going to take it home as it is and make sure that I superimpose or do a photo transfer in this piece, and it will become a single print. So if we take a look at what I've done over here, this is the tea bag paper that I've dyed with gallnut dye. So gallnut can be a mordant or it can be a dye, and so I've used it as the base for all of these papers. My intention is to use these papers to back it with fabric and to use it as book cloth. And this will hopefully resonate and work with the images that I have taken of the area for a limited edition book that I am going to work on when I get back to Maine. So here I did the same thing. I dyed the paper, then I put pigments, a mixture of pigments, and I put it out in the landscape. I put stuff on top of it. I let it dry. I took it back. I did some more. I let it dry outside. So it's been interacting with the landscape. And I love the way it really did pick up a lot of the little nuances that you see in the stone are resonant here. So I can just take this and say, okay, it's pretty close. And I really love that. I love the way it mimics what I've been seeing for the last 2 weeks. And I'm excited to take it home and work with it. Yeah, so I did coat these also with Konyaku, which is a strengthening agent. It's Japanese, and it gives the paper quite a resilient texture. It changes the feel of it. There's a little bit of crunch, but there's also quite a bit of strength. So you can feel the texture of the paper here. Compared to this paper, this was the original paper. So this is what the paper was originally. And now this is what we have now. So it's quite a difference. It's really interesting how both the dyes, the pigments, and the Konyaku gives it that almost leather-like texture. That is really very interesting. So I think I said earlier that I do want to use these for perhaps a case for a limited edition book that will include many of the photos that I have taken, along with the photo shoot that I did with Marie, and words. So, words haven't quite come yet, although I've been writing down 1 million of them. So I'm hoping to get that done in the next month or two as I return to Maine and finish that while everything's fresh in mind. As our time together unfolded, we created a photographic collaboration in locations that had become meaningful to us. As we moved through the landscape, I was equally drawn to Marie's quiet responses, to the way she paused for the golden light, the shifting shadows, and the subtle gestures of the place.
I love being able to just look at the divisions here. This is the older building, and there's a separation here to this new piece that's been added later, I think. So you've got your layers of history. You just have all these questions about who built this. Because to look at that ceiling, Karen, like, how does that stay up there? When you look at the way those stones are placed. The shadows are falling on the wall, that interplay with the light. And that's what I've been working on in the studio, to try and look at the positives and negatives of just these plants. A lot of them are weeds that just grow, in these little crevices, but they're so beautiful, and the shapes. I'm getting some really good prints. I'm really happy with them too. I'm looking at these stairs that lead into this doorway, another round arch, and wondering who lived in there, what was that used for? Because it's quite a beautiful, like these beautiful old stairs made from these huge slabs of stone. Oh, I think probably it was somebody's house at some stage.
My time here in Collemacchia has been everything this residency intends it to be. Rather than being a museum in the traditional sense, the Museum of Loss and Renewal is a living collection of shared experiences, a place that invites us to consider what it means to live with greater balance, presence, and care. Italy has shared with me its extraordinary abundance, and, in its own quiet way, something within me has been gently rewilded. I will remember the silver shimmer of olive trees, grapevines reaching effortlessly across the paths, fig trees inviting notice in their splendid fullness, and blackberry brambles heavy with the promise of fruit. Wild mint spilling onto the trail, pears, apples, plums, and apricots, feral cats, Persian walnuts, and fields of the deepest blue chicory. Wolves howling in the distance, the dance of the house martins in the evening sky, the frilly covering of hazelnuts and the delicate silkiness of fresh artisan ricotta, and a shared walk up the mountain after nightfall, the gentle calls of scops owls and the glow of fireflies accompanying us home. I found a small piece of myself I knew was missing. Perhaps it was there all along, waiting for me to follow the golden thread home.